Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over the leaked legendary tier set for the Trickster called Trespassers in Outriders. Now before we get into the video, less than 5% of people that watch my videos are subscribed to my channel. So make sure to subscribe if you want to keep up with all of my uploads. And like with all of these leaked legendaries, don't pay too much attention to the actual stats and numbers on them. We're mainly going to be looking at the mods and the tier set bonuses. All of the class tier sets in Outriders focus on two different abilities, either from the tier set bonus of the armor set or the mods on the different armor pieces. And the first ability that this tier set focuses on is the slow trap ability, which creates a space-time anomaly that inflicts slow onto enemies and projectiles for 10 seconds. We have this ability to use in the demo. You essentially put up a big bubble that slows everything. Slows enemies in it, slows their movement, makes it much easier to hit headshots on those enemies. It slows all projectiles that go into the bubble, pretty much making it so when this bubble is up, you're gonna have a pretty low chance of ever dying to anything because you're taking very minimal or no damage while in this bubble. And the second ability is Time Rift. Create a shockwave that suspends enemies in the air, leaving them unable to fight for 3.5 seconds and inflicts weakness. Now we haven't been able to use this ability in the demo, but we have seen it used in some of the footage that the developers have released, and it seems like an incredibly strong CC ability because it's an AoE CC that lasts 3.5 seconds. Now I'm not sure what kind of enemies this won't work on. It seems like CC in this game even works on all the bosses, so I'm not sure if there's going to be, say, a reduced time on CC for certain bosses or certain enemies. Some enemies, say, are too big and it will work on them, but also inflicts weakness, which means they're dealing 30% less damage when they can fight again. And overall, this will be an incredibly strong CC ability. The tier set bonus for the Trespassers set is players can't die while inside the slow trap. And this essentially turns a slow trap into an invulnerability as well. This is incredibly strong for solo play and for playing in a group of players, because say if you see your teammates low and you're using the set and they're about to die, you can just go over to them and place the slow trap and then they're unkillable. Now I'm assuming this works the way a lot of other abilities like this work in, say, other RPGs or even something like a MOBA, where it'll most likely allow you to get to 1 health, then you can't go past that. So you have the opportunity to not only keep fighting but heal yourself up a bunch as well, so when the slow trap goes away you don't just instantly die. I'm not sure if this is going to be a thing in Outriders, but a lot of RPGs, especially on boss fights, will have certain abilities that the bosses do that you either dodge or do something in the fight, or that ability will one-shot you. You see it in a lot of MMO boss fights, you see it in a lot of RPGs that there will be some like big attack that's usually slower that would usually one-shot you. If there's anything like that in certain boss fights in Outriders, this could be a set that is very worthwhile having, especially for, say, farming that specific boss, because you could put the slow trap down and just DPS through a specific mechanic that maybe you'd have to hide from before or something along those lines, but you can just eat it now because it can't kill you in the slow trap. So first we have the Trespasser's Cowl, and the tier 3 on this is delivery on time for slow trap. Activating the skill replenishes ammo for every ally's current weapon in the spear's range. So essentially you have this big bubble with slow trap that you place down, and you and all your allies that are in range of the bubble when you place it instantly get all of their ammo in their current magazine replenished. Now this is pretty massive, not only for yourself because you can create combos for yourself where you can, say, have other buffs in that current magazine, or use all your magazine, place the bubble, instantly have another full magazine, which can help pretty heavily on bursting down bosses or just for general use to skip reloading. But also you can create some massive synergies with other players. Say if you had someone running like a Blighted Rounds build or a Volcanic Rounds build and they're on their last little bit of ammo for that ability, you can then place this bubble down and instantly refresh all of their ammo to keep them doing a ton of damage from their Blighted Rounds or their Volcanic Rounds. And then the other mod is Long Reach for Time Rift, triples the skill's range. And this is actually pretty massive, especially if you're going to be actually using the skill, because we already see in the demo that enemies can have a pretty big area where they spawn and they run around and try to get in different covers. So having a much bigger area of effect with your AoE CC ability is going to be pretty massive, especially once you get into, say, expeditions or farther into the late game. Being able to CC as much enemies as possible is going to be pretty massive. It can possibly allow you to get enough downtime from enemies damage damaging you to stay alive or pick off more dangerous enemies. Next up, we have Trespasser's Armor. The tier 3 for this is damage mitigation for slow trap. Allies within the sphere receive 20% less damage. Now, in my opinion, this tier 3 isn't that strong with having this tier set bonus, because with how much healing you can do in Outriders and how consistently you can do it, taking 20% less damage in the bubble that already stops a majority of damage and stops you from being able to die, 20% damage reduction really doesn't seem like it's something that's that important, because even if you're a 1 HP in this bubble, you can still heal up a ton pretty easily in this game. So in my opinion, using this tier 3 isn't that strong while having the tier set bonus. This could definitely be something that you're using in other sets that could work pretty well. Then the other mod is ultimate big range for slow trap, increases a spear's range by 2 meters. So your big bubble is now bigger. And I think there was even footage of this in some footage released by the developers. And I think this is something you're able to use in the demo. And it does make the bubble pretty massive. So next up, we have Trespasser's Talons. And the tier 3 for this is pain transfer for time rift. 10% of weapon damage and 30% of anomaly damage dealt to one affected enemy will be transferred to another affected enemy. So essentially, time rift is a big AoE stun. And now when you're damaging one of the enemies in time rift, it will now transfer some of that damage to another enemy. Now I'm assuming this means it's taking that 10% weapon damage and 30% anomaly damage and just causing another target to take that damage as well. It's not removing possible damage from the main target and giving it to somebody else. It's most likely just kind of how blighted rounds work, where other enemies take 50% of the damage you dealt to the main target. Seems to be something like this, and also take into consideration that if you hit multiple enemies, say with a damaging ability, it should also transfer that damage from every single one of those enemies to another enemy as well. So you could possibly get to the point where you use time rift, you use say temporal slice, and then it hits all the enemies with the normal temporal slice damage, and then 30% of that damage from every one of those enemies is shared to one additional enemy, just massively increasing the amount of AoE damage you can deal in it. It's going to take some testing to see exactly how it works, but that's the way I'm assuming it works. Then the other mod is double time for time rift. Enemies are suspended in the air 2 times longer. Now this is also pretty insane because it's 3.5 seconds baseline, so it's 7 seconds now. That is a massive CC, and this tier 1 is incredibly strong, and I'm assuming that this tier 1 is going to be used in any build that you're using time rift with. It's so massive, especially for just a tier 1 mod. So next up, we have Trespasser's Britches. The tier 3 for this is another one for time rift. Shots on enemies affected by the skill do not consume ammo. So seeing more and more of these time rift mods, seems like there's going to be a build that heavily focuses on augmenting time rift and then dealing a ton of burst damage after you use time rift, because you're just having tons of these augments that increase the damage dealt to these enemies. Now you don't consume ammo when shooting them. It now lasts 7 seconds if combined with the last mod we went over. And then you don't have to worry about your survivability as much because everything's CC'd. So some pretty massive synergies with time rift mods so far. And the other mod is a little bit of pain for time rift. Using this skill deals 61,000 damage over 10 seconds to the affected targets. Now this seems to be a decent bit of damage, not an extreme amount of damage, but what I'm wondering is how this synergizes with the last skill we went over, or one of the last mods we went over, where enemies affected by time rift now cause some anomaly damage and weapon damage to be transferred to another enemy as well. And I'm wondering if this dot will proc that mod as well. So say you use time rift on enemies, they now have a dot that deals this decent amount of damage over time, then 30% of that damage is also being transferred to another enemy. So now every enemy is taking this damage over time, and also every time it ticks, all of those enemies are transferring some of that damage to another enemy as well, which would pretty much make time rift its own massive AoE damage ability past all the other things it does as well. Then finally, we have Trespasser's Boots. The tier 3 for this is Stare into the Barrel. Boost your firepower by 63,000 for each enemy in close range, stacks up to 5 times. Now comparing some of the numbers on these leaked armor pieces and comparing them to the numbers you see on officially released armor pieces from the developers, this does seem like quite a bit of firepower, and stacking up 5 times is pretty nuts. And I think the reason this is on this armor piece on this specific tier set is because you can put down your massive slow bubble and easily have a bunch of enemies close to you. So this could also help turn your slow trap into kind of a burst ability, because you put this down, enemies aren't running around anymore, they're all slowed right next to you. Being able to keep this tier 3 mod stacked up, giving you a ton of additional firepower, giving you a pretty big burst window while in slow trap. And the other mod is a weakening zone for slow trap. Enemies entering the zone are affected by weakness. Now this one as well seems a little bit weak specifically for this tier set because that makes enemies deal 30% less damage, and with slow trap you're already slowing down on projectiles, most likely not taking a lot of damage. You're unable to die in the slow trap, so most likely this is something that I would personally be rolling off if I was using this tier set and using a build that has slow trap in it. So you really wouldn't need this extra damage reduction while not being able to die in the bubble. So that is the entirety of the Trespasser set for the Trickster. This set seems pretty strong. The tier set bonus seems like something that's going to be used more for specific areas in the game or specific bosses to be able to pretty much skip certain effects in the game. Maybe this effect at high challenge tier or world tier would one-shot you. Now you just slow trap and completely skip that ability. But what really has me interested is all of the time rift mods on this. It seems like with all these mods, you're going to be able to turn time rift into this incredibly strong CC ability that's massive, CCs enemies for 7 seconds, does a ton of damage, transfers a ton of damage between different enemies, and I definitely am going to want to try to create a build specifically built around having these massive burst windows with time rift. So subscribe if you want to see more Outriders or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video, leave a comment down below what you guys think about this tier set, and thanks for watching.